bonkin', everybody, and welcome to Take Your Time, the Persona 5 podcast where we play Persona 5 Royal in real time, along with its in-game calendar dates with the real-world calendar dates. I'm Tom Marks, always joined, as always, oh my goodness, this is off to a great start already, by Jonathan Dornbush. Jonathan.
We're recording slightly earlier in the morning, and it's amazing how much that can really affect you. I very much understand, but I'm also very concerned because my hair won't stop going down like this in a way I don't approve of. So, we're all having our issues this morning, but it's good to be here.
Speaking of issues, some of you may have noticed if you're keeping up real time with the podcast, the real time podcast, then we did miss last week because of just life stuff. Jonathan was moving, nothing major.
There's a box back there that you can kind of see.
That's part of playing a game right in real time like this, is that we have to be playing it in real time, which means we don't pre-record episodes that far in advance or anything like that. So just to catch everyone up, if you're listening after the fact and you're just like coming back to this podcast years later after the apocalypse has happened or whatever, this won't affect you in literally any way. But if you're in real time, what we're doing is we're doing 2 episodes. We're recording 2 episodes today. So we're just going to cover what we missed last week basically now. And if you're listening after the fact, you just have 2 episodes like normal, and it's no different, except we won't have direct viewer responses in the second episode and next episode. So that's just to catch you up. Before we jump into what happened this week, a week I have dubbed Makoto's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week, because it just feels like the Makoto catches no breaks this week.
It's been rough for her. Yeah, we'll get into all of that, but I have several notes that are like, man, she's having it bad. People are just mean to Makoto.
Yeah, this is the second half of her or the first part of her redemption arc, right?
Yes.
Anyway, before we get to that, we did have a pop quiz last week. Last week, I asked you, the viewers at home, what country was Ann's first modeling job in? This was something that she drops in, I think, her level 3 confidant thing. It's when you're hanging out with her at the park. Jonathan, did you have a guess?
I wanted to say somewhere in the Netherlands region, the Switzerland, Netherlands, something with a Lind at the end of it. But yeah, that was about as far as I could get. I have done this confidant moment, but I think I did it really early, and so it's just out of my memory.
You're right.
Mind palace.
It was a land. Her first was in Destiny Land. No.
I have to leave the call. I'm sorry.
But we did get a couple questions and a couple guesses, and somebody did get it right. Mitch said, for some reason, Belgium is sticking in my head for that pop quiz. So that's my guess. I felt like it was something European. Same vibe. You're both on the right track. And Sam did get it, saying Ann's first modeling gig was it in Finland, which is correct. I seem to remember that she's like 1/4 Finnish or maybe Norwegian. Again, the right area of the world, but it was Finland.
Yeah,
and I guess that is the implication is that like one of her parents is Finnish or partway, and she used to live there when she was younger and then moved to Japan.
Yeah, I think that's some part of it. I remember there's a little bit of it, because that also leads to some of the disconnect she has with the other students. I remember,
right,
is where that conversation comes into place.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the pop quiz. We also got some comments that I wanted to read off real quick. First of all, somebody, Maeve, addressed our confusion last week with Makoto and Akechi just like being in the same school for no reason on a Sunday, and it was all very confusing. And Maeve says, I think Makoto and Akechi go to the same cram school. I had to look it up when I played because I was curious. It's basically the Japanese equivalent of SAT prep for students outside of regular school, which totally tracks for Makoto and Akechi because they're both goody two-shoes smart kids.
Yeah, they would absolutely be the two who would run into each other at a school like that. You would never see Ryuichi there. So yeah, it
right.
Makes sense. It tracks.
Yeah. And I guess that was just something that I just like didn't process. But cool. Yeah. Thank you so much, man, for
I did SAT prep stuff, but it completely fell out of my brain that would be something that maybe kids would do at some point to, especially the studious ones.
Yeah. We also had a bunch of people respond to my general confusion about Dometown. And yes, I did know that Dometown was based off of the Tokyo Dome as a real location. I just was trying to get a sense of the Western analog for what that is, if there was one, but I couldn't I think the answer is, like, it's sort of like things, but sort of not. John wrote in and said, Dome Town refers to the Tokyo Dome, which you probably know is the biggest venue in Tokyo. Since it's such a popular destination, they've attached all sorts of other entertainment things to it, which is, I guess it's just as simple as that. Is it was a popular place, so they just built it out, and it's a place to hang out and that sort of thing, which is cool.
Yeah, we just don't... I've been trying to think of an analog, too, and I just really don't think there is anything quite like that. Like, there are definitely places where it's a short drive from, like, a concert venue to an amusement park or something like that, but, like, maybe the Mall of America, like, that's probably the closest I can think of.
I think that is, like, genuinely the closest you could probably get in the West.
Yeah.
Beyond just, like, downtown Disneyland.
True. Yes. Yeah.
You know, like, but that doesn't really count because that's all an amusement park.
Yeah.
And
you have to pay hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Well, no, downtown you technically can get into on your own. This is for our Disney podcast, of course.
Anyway, the last comment I wanted to read off was from Sasha. Says, really excited to jump in and catch up to where y'all are in the story in my New Game Plus now that my summer break has started. I have so many other games to play, but I'm also like, what if I played P5R again? Don't worry, we've been there. This podcast is really making me want to jump back in. I'm glad that is having that effect on people, because as you can probably tell, we really like this game, and I'm not, like, upset about having to play it for a second time.
No, it's definitely not. I mean, I'm playing Royal for the first time, but playing just, like, Persona 5 in general for the second time. There are definitely, at times in the back of my head, I'm like, there are a lot of games I want to be playing right now, and, like, games I haven't played before, and I tend to not be someone who replays games, but I adore playing this game, and I'm having so much fun that it's, like, it's been enough time has passed since I played it the first time that it feels fresh still.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's just been a blast to go through. So I'm glad that it's had that effect on you as well, Sasha. Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, am I excited for you to get into some of the Royal stuff that we are starting to unlock, because it's gonna get weird now.
Yeah, I can't wait. Spoilers, I did hang out with Maruki a few more times next week.
Hooray!
But we'll get to that then. But yeah.
Okay. Well, this week, let's talk about Makoto's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week, which is just a mess of. She just gets so beat down.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, from all corners of her life, and like we'll get into it of like how some of these things are obviously based on the way she has behaved. Like, it's understandable how some people would act to her, but yeah, it's just in general, it is it's one of those weeks where every little thing just seems to keep piling up on a person.
Yeah. This is, of course, the week of June 14th through June 20th. Again, we do our real life Monday through Sunday, which is the in-games Tuesday through Monday, because nothing is easy, but that's okay. June 14th, we start off, we're at the train station, and Oya comes up to you, who you don't know is Oya at this point. She's just the journalist lady who you saw out of Madarame's house, and I find this very funny because she's like, oh, hey, you're that kid I met outside of Madarame's house like 2 weeks ago, and I feel like I would not remember, like, either human being would remember each other in that situation.
Yeah, it really does. So, like, I'm a person who will often remember, like, very small interactions with a person and recognize that again, but I have then been on the opposite end of those, where I have then been talking to someone who then literally, like, a week later I run into, and they just have no recognition that I exist. And, like,
right.
Let me tell you, it feels awful. But I think I think you're right. I think both of them would, there's really no reason they probably would remember each other. Like, especially in her line of work, where she is probably constantly talking to new faces quickly for short moments of time. Like, it's surprising that
but then again,
happen.
Maybe she's a really good investigative journalist, and so
Maybe.
she always remembers a face or something like that.
Yeah, and what better way for an investigative journalist to get all their information than teenagers?
Well, we'll get into more of that later this week for sure. But you see her, I definitely was like, I don't know who you are, which was funny. But Oya is there very briefly. Moving on to the meat of what this day is. If you remember, the day before, Makoto catches you and blackmails you and is like, hey, come meet me on the roof, and I have a target. I want you to change their heart, and we can talk about it. So you meet Makoto on the roof, and it's all very hostile and tense. And basically she reveals that the person she wants you to change their heart is a mafia boss.
Definitely a step up.
Like you do.
Yep.
Yeah. Definitely a step up. And so you guys are like, that's ridiculous and dangerous, but like, what's their name? And Makoto's like, I don't know.
What am I supposed to know the details of that? No, yeah, it's a very funny, like, it's a little bit of the, I'm trying to think of where to start here, because it's one of those things where, like, obviously this is a wild game world where, we're going into these cognitive regions that are, fighting giant phallic monsters in recreations of the real world in spectacular ways. But yeah, like a kid in high school being like, yeah, I want you to take down a mafia boss. That's where I'm like, hold on a second.
She's ambitious, okay?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
But again, the point of this is, for her, is it's a terrible target. It's a way to solve her problem of students getting attacked, right? Or exploited, or whatever is going on, threatened. And also, it will prove that the Phantom Thieves go after bad people in her head. Then we get this flash forward to Sai in the the prison cell scene, basically being like you're trying to mess with me by saying that my sister was involved. How dare you? And but also being like, fine, I'll keep listening to you, because that's what she does every time that it flash forwards. Is she's like, I don't believe you. Keep talking.
Yeah, this is ridiculous, and there's no way that could be true. I want to know more.
Yeah, I mean, who are we to say? Maybe
exactly.
She's great.
I do.
Anyway.
I love those scenes, though. They are really fun.
Yeah.
They always follow that same cadence, but yeah, it's a really fun moment to keep checking back in on.
And they do give you more of a sense of Sai very slowly, right?
Yes.
You get to check in with her, because she's a character you don't see much of during the course of the actual story, and obviously becomes important later, because she's interrogating you in a prison cell. So from there, basically the team talks and is like, this is crazy, and we don't know what we should do, but also we were looking for a target that was bigger than Kaneshiro, or Madarame, and we're looking for a target that would prove to people that we were a good person, and if we took down a mafia boss that the cops couldn't even take down, then nobody would be able to question that we were doing a good thing and that we were fighting on the side of good, basically, is their reasoning.
Yeah, totally. And it's something that I really like. It's one of the things that our patron saint of personas will refer to him always, Andrew Goldfarb, when he was first telling me about, trying to convince me to play the game at the time, way back in 2018. No, it was probably 2017. Anyway, regardless, he talked about one of the things that always really impressed him with the game was the way it ramps up its scale and the way it continues to make the targets that you're going after have a greater importance, either personally or societally and culturally. And it is a really interesting, it's definitely a jump, but it's in the same way that we talked about with Madarame. It's it's continuing to evolve their goals and the things they go after, but it also makes them reckon with is what we're doing correct? Are we are the people's hearts we're trying to change worth doing this to? Is it a valuable thing to do? Are we crossing a line? XYZ. So yeah, it's I think as we get into it, it's a really good example of continuing to up that ante.
And this will obviously become clearer further into this week that we start talking, but also it's not just upping the ante in that way, it's also upping the ante in oh my god, Kamoshida. All the names are blending for me right now, I'm sorry. Kamoshida was you're gonna get expelled, right? And then Madarame was, I'm gonna sue you, and the police are gonna come after you. And then now this is outside the law, you're messing with someone who is a criminal, right? Yeah. And so it's that sort of scale up too, where the stakes are getting higher too. But as we get to that, they decide it's a good idea, they decide to go for it, and they're gonna have to investigate, try to find this guy's name. And then that afternoon, Yusuke hits you up and is like, can I come over and hang out at LeBlanc because I want to talk? And Yusuke at this point basically spills the beans to you, spills his heart, says he's in a complete artist slump, and the events of Madarame have basically poisoned his mind about, like, what the heart wants, and has corrupted his art, and he doesn't feel like he can make good art, and that not only that, but he's on an art scholarship at his school, and so if his work starts to slip and his teacher notices, then he could have his scholarship revoked and he won't go to school anymore. And he basically wants to talk to you occasionally and work with you to help him get through this slump if you can. Which is very nice and vulnerable. And then he doesn't become a confidant!
I love how much you hate it's you know, it's one of those conversations that you're either having with a really, really close personal friend or someone who overshares too much. And a little of column A and a little column B in Yusuke's case. But he's still not your confidant.
I can't fully remember because it's been a while. It was a while since I played this section, but, like, I'm pretty sure you even talk about still, like, striking a deal with him in this scene or something, and then he's just like, okay, I'll see you later, and leaves. And it's like, what's going on? What are we doing here, Yusuke? What are we doing here?
He plays hard to get. I mean, you know, because it's something that we'll get to eventually when we talk about, like, the romances, and obviously it's a frustrating point that the game really only allows you to do romances. It is only gender specific. Like, you can only romance female identifying characters. And it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like you and Yusuke could have developed a bond. Like,
probably.
There's some of the conversation where, like, this probably could have gone romantically. But yeah, it's just kind of like, where are we right now? It feels like you need to have a status of the relationship discussion with this guy, and according to him, you're not even in a relationship of any kind.
Like, technically, mechanically speaking, you're more bonded right now with, like, a shady clinic doctor and your counselor at school than you are with a man who you literally saved from an abusive father who murdered his mother and then gave a couch to sleep on.
Yeah, but art. It's complicated, much like you
Anyway, luckily you don't have to wait too much longer, but this was the moment, I think, when I was first playing this game where, like, he didn't become a confidant in that moment. I was like, is this a joke? Like, what's happening?
Am I doing something wrong? Yeah.
Where are the cameras? Where are the cameras right now? I'm on a show.
Yeah. It's a big extravagant prank show that they made this 100-hour RPG just to prank you. But, you know, that's what Ashton Kutcher is up to these days, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. So we did have a free evening that night, too. I went to the bathhouse because it was rainy, and I was still trying to get Charm and Guts up. How about you?
What did I do? I went to play darts with Yusuke on Ryuji, and thus, you know, got my... why can't I think of it? My baton pass level up with Yusuke, but didn't get my friendship up with Yusuke, which was a very funny moment. No, why would I after playing darts?
Yeah. I think that happened to me the week before.
Yeah. I played darts. I played a side note. I played 1 week. I think this is the second time that I played darts. I don't have it with me, but I played the first week on the Backbone controller, so I was remote playing for a little bit. And of course, with darts, you're supposed to, you know, like, flick the thing, but it didn't really register because it was like, I'm not using a DualSense or a DualShock. I'm using a controller that is plugged into my phone, which is emulating a controller. So I really had to, like, flick on the phone really, like, tough and really make sure it registered, and I missed so many shots that first time. So playing darts this time was like night and day how much better I was at it.
Can I break your heart real quick? You want to know something that the game does not tell you at all about darts that I was going to bring up this week, actually?
Oh, no. What?
You can just press X. It literally doesn't tell you this anywhere, but you do not need to use motion controls. You can just press X.
I spent like 5 minutes flicking my phone while, like, in the break of Critical Role. Just like, come on. just go. Just go.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't go. And I was like, is it broken? What's wrong? And then the thing also is, this is a total tangent, but the Remote Play app, the touchpad button is very finicky compared to all the rest of the buttons on it. And so I spent the entire break just trying to land like 3 darts.
Yeah. Yeah, press X.
Cool. Press X to dart. Anyway, yeah, so that was my evening.
Yeah, that makes darts way easier to do it that way. Just press X.
I do have fun playing darts, except for that moment.
Yeah, it's not a bad minigame.
No,
it's just good. It's also motion controls, and it does not need motion controls.
It definitely doesn't. Anyway, let's go on to June 15th.
June 6th. Yeah, June 15th. So you could read on the train. I read about Charm because
Nice.
I'm still trying to get Charm up because Takemi needs leveled up Charm.
Okay. I read and got my kindness up, and that got me everything to level 3. That was the only one that was lacking.
Gotcha. Wait, you have knowledge at level 3 already?
I got level 3. I spent a little too much time studying. I had this problem.
Okay, yeah.
I did this in my first playthrough too, where I so worry about getting ready for the test that I spend a few extra nights studying. And so, yeah, I have everything at level 3 at this point.
Wow, that is impressive. I think at this point, I only had... I don't even remember. I think I only have proficiency and guts at level 3 at this point.
Okay. I also, because you had guts higher than I did for a while, and guts is always the hardest one for me, anytime it was a rainy night or a rainy day, I would do the study at the cafe to get knowledge and guts, so I did that several times.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I basically like doubled down on trying to get my stats up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. The main kind of story beat in this one is that it starts off with the principal and Makoto talking again, and the principal, who last time Makoto talked to him was basically like, I don't care about kids getting threatened, you deal with it. And this time he's like, what do you mean kids are getting threatened? This is all your fault. And so he has completely changed tunes and basically just literally my notes just looking at it right here was just, principal is super weird and bad. That was what I wrote down.
Mine was, now in all caps, now the principal cares about the mafia.
Yeah. So suddenly he cares a lot and is freaking out at Makoto and basically being like, why haven't you solved this yet? And Makoto is getting very stressed out, pretty much, and is worried about it and also doesn't like the principal because the principal sucks and is weird and bad.
Yep.
But you then get to this point where you're actually going to start investigating, right? You're going to try to figure out what's going on. And you decide to start with, you'd heard a rumor that this kid named Ida had, spent a bunch of money, had been spending a lot more money than he had lately. And so you're like, okay, we're going to try to talk to him and we're going to investigate the school and see if anybody else has gotten roped into whatever this stuff is. Starts to talk to him and just does an absolutely wonderful, terrible job of her acting, trying to get information out of him, not working at all, but also kind of working because high school boys, I guess.
Yeah, that's how I read it. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful through line of her trying to act to basically seduce Yusuke. And how terrible her acting was there, and Ryuji and Joker commenting on it there, and then here I think Morgana too was like, what is that can't possibly work, but yeah,
there's
go ahead.
I was gonna say there's a little bit of a mini game, right, of just running around the school asking and trying to find the right people to talk to and getting information, that sort of thing, and you eventually find out that basically sketchy people in Shibuya will walk up to kids and offer them want to know if they want to do a part-time job for a bunch of money. And if you say yes, you have to deliver a small envelope to a box or a locker or whatever. And it's probably drugs. And you're probably a drug mule. But then they give you tons of money, but then immediately they send photos of you with the drugs being like, hey, if you don't work for us forever or give us even more money, we'll ruin your life. And that's sort of the plan, is they trick kids into doing this drug mule thing and then exploit them for all they have and destroy their life and make them pay and blah, 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 blah. And that happened to Ida and is happening to other kids, apparently.
And if only the principal had cared a little bit earlier. But yeah, it's it's a funny back and forth. It was one of those things I remember the first time I played this. Having played it, it helped me a little bit. But the first time I played, one thing I just generally didn't really do was pay attention to like signs in the world. And so like I got super lost my first time playing this in the school because it was the first time I really spent a lot of time going like up and around and through all the hallways, and this time I was able to like ping pong back and forth pretty easily. But it's just a nice little way, I think, to kind of like couch it again in something that is what is the actual like connective tissue for the gang to what's going on with this case, because there's probably a lot of bad, not mafia bosses, there are probably only so many of them, but there's probably a lot of criminal organizations doing things that you could go after, and so this one being one that is directly affecting the kids, and you get firsthand knowledge of that stuff, I think helps bridge the gap with Makoto. It
would be really weird if they just ran straight to Shibuya and were like, let's find a mob boss, and like for no reason, basically.
We'll do that soon, though.
Yes, that is something that happens, but I agree that I like the like on-ramp of this grounding it in Shujin and then taking it away from there.
Yeah.
Because you do figure out that this is happening on Central Street or around Central Street in Shibuya, and so you say, okay, we've gotten the information we want for today. Let's regroup tomorrow. We'll go to Shibuya and we'll ask around there about part-time jobs and see if we can't find more information about what's going on. And then you get a free evening that day, or that night, which I spent hanging out with Kawakami.
I did the same.
Hooray!
I don't know if we want to spoil it. I know we talked about it a little bit, but like, I know how important this confidant getting it, like the skills it unlocks for you are. So I very much like the second I see it pop up, it's kind of my go-to.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say basically her skills are all revolving around giving you more time here and there when you need it, saving you time, which is, as we said before, is the most valuable resource in this game, and so she is really valuable in that sense. Additionally, I believe, if I remember this correctly, she's always available on Wednesday and Saturday nights.
Okay.
So those are the evenings that you can hang out with her, which is, I at least almost always plan around that when I can. I try not to, if I can manage it, try not to go to Palaces or Mementos on Wednesdays or Saturdays, just because, like, then you get that evening and it's going to be pretty consistent. And she isn't always available for that, but that is the general sort of rule.
Yeah.
So Kawakami is super important, and her story keeps developing in interesting ways, like we talked about last time, if also developing in gross ways. But that's okay.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there later. We got to figure out generally how we're going to talk about confidant storyline still. I figure what we do is maybe when, like, both of us have fully completed that or something, we can, like, go back and have an episode where we just talk about their whole little story or something like that. Because we don't want to spoil people and we don't want to rush you into doing ones before you want to or anything like that.
We actually got an email about that, which I can read now since we're talking about it quickly. But Cam from Oklahoma wrote in to dornology@gmail.com, which you can as well if you want to write in questions, and said, loving the podcast. Thanks for giving me something to look forward to every week. I've been a Persona fan for almost 2 years now, so I'm a bit late to the game. A couple thoughts, and don't worry about being late to the game. It's time is important in the game, but whenever you get to it on your own time, that's what matters. I've played through Royal and loved it. Are you all going to go into a little of what each S-Link is about? I love that you're talking about who you hung out with, but I would love your thoughts on the personal stories of the characters, like what Takemi goes through and the drama around Ann's modeling, opinions on Yoshida, later confidants as well. As you level them up, can you give us some insight on how you enjoyed the S-Links or not? Great show. Keep up the great work. I think... Yeah, we'll probably have to have some like off-camera discussions to get into it a little bit more. But yeah, my general thought is I definitely want to plan ahead to, especially in the quieter weeks, maybe use those to talk about the confidants and like make sure we're roughly in the same place to be able to talk about that stuff. But it might be good to do like, okay, we got like halfway through X, Y, and Z confidants. Let's talk about them now and then talk about the second halves later. But yeah, we definitely want to talk about that stuff for sure.
Yeah. It's just a matter of figuring it out, and we have enough to talk about right now, as it is, so we're going to keep digging in. That evening, we both hung out with Kawakami.
Yes.
Where were we? Yes, June 16th now? Yes, June 16th.
Yes.
Which I just wrote down as sketchy Shibuya searching.
Yeah.
Say that 10 times fast. So the gang goes out to Shibuya to start looking up, just like literally walking up to every shady person they can find and being like, I heard about part-time jobs. And then you like walk up to homeless people and are like, hey man, I heard about a part-time job. And the homeless person's like, I don't know about that. Go talk to that other homeless person. And then you go talk to the other homeless person. The other homeless person's like, you don't want that job, kid. And it's like all very weird and
You don't want
great.
this life. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, it's a very funny segment, and I think, again, plays off the balance really well of, like, yes, they are doing some pretty amazing stuff when it comes to, like, the palace investigations and all that, but at the end of the day, they are still just kids. Like,
Yeah.
they don't know how to do this well.
Yeah. And that is very clear where you eventually figure out... Actually, you don't really figure anything out, really. You just sort of wander into an alley at some point, and some guy finally comes up to you, and Makoto is also there. And this is probably one of my favorite running gags of before Makoto joins your team, which I don't think we've talked about, is that when you're walking around places and Makoto is snooping on you, she'll just be walking around with her face in a book, following you, and you can just walk up and talk to her, and she'll be like, oh, hey, what a coincidence. We're both here. This book is really good, bye. And, like, it's so good.
She, the way they play that side of it, and then also, as you've written down, in this conversation, she's just a super obvious narc. I wrote it as well. She's just a narc.
She's such a narc.
Yeah, like, she is, you know, following in the footsteps, I guess, of Sai as, like, someone who looks into things, investigates, and whatnot. But it's a very funny dichotomy of her trying to, like, follow behind and snoop on all of you, and then here where she's just like, like, even in my head, I'm like, okay, you play it cool, you go along just to try to get the information. She's like, so who are you working for? Give me the like, basically it's just like, give me the information of your illegal misdeeds.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she kind of tries to bluff that she, like, already knows the boss's name, and it, like, doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And this guy kind of threatens her, and you sort of back her up a little bit, and she's just such a narc. She's so very clearly not good at what she is doing right there.
Yeah, but it's endearing. Like, it is frustrating from a investigation point, but it is endearing in a way of, like, I think it helps break away at some of the idea that she is this, like, perfect pupil that kind of acts above everyone. Like, she is messing up here. Like, she is screwing over this investigation that she wants you to be doing. And so I do think giving her some fallacy here is a smart move. Yeah.
And so nobody's talking to you, so you decide to disband for the day and meet up at the... for some reason, you're like, tomorrow let's meet up at a karaoke place to discuss this in secret. Because you've suddenly decided that maybe the walkway in Shibuya is not the best place to be talking about this, I guess? I don't know. Anyway, you decide to meet up at karaoke, which is great. Because nobody is willing to say their boss's name, basically. It's clear that they're very secretive and very protective, this organization that you're going after. Because you do get, like, hints of it, right? But you don't... Like, Makoto was, like, clearly talking to someone sketchy, but just, like, not well. And then that evening, as you're going back, Makoto calls you. Which is weird because you didn't give her your number, and she kind of, like, she is, like, cryptic about where she got it from, but basically she just calls you to be like, thank you. Like, it just shows that she's softening a little bit. She just, like, thanks you, but then also is, like, talking about the investigation. It's just, like, a little bit of, like, a lower key check-in, basically.
Yeah, a little bit more of a again, humanizing her in a different way, and not...
Right.
Like, she has definitely been antagonistic to the group, and I think this is going a bit of the way to show that she doesn't really feel that way. Like, that is definitely part of what she has felt pressured to act like.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get off the phone, and immediately Sojiro's like, hey, some girl asked for your number. You're like, thanks, Sojiro.
There we go. Yeah.
And then there's a free evening that day, which I spent leveling Sojiro.
Nice. I went and did the first Big Bang Burger challenge.
Oh, cool, good.
Because
It took me a minute to process that, but yeah.
it's a lot of B's, I understand. No, yeah, the first game, I was really bad about my, my, like, guts leveling up, and so I did this stupid thing where I kept failing the Big Burger Challenge on purpose to get guts late in the game, because I thought that was the only easy way to get guts. And so here, now that my guts was a bit more up, because I've been reading and watching DVDs and just, like, generally trying to be better about it, being able to do it the second I realized I could, I was like, oh, I'm going for this. And so...
If you're already at 3 for everything, though, that means you could do the second Big Bang Burger challenge, too.
It does, but you're getting ahead of my week, Tom.
All right. Never mind, then. On to June 17th, we see Akechi at the train station briefly. Always just a nice little weird, cordial conversation with him that's always very kind of like... usually about the Phantom Thieves or something weird and Akechi being adorable. Then you have this karaoke meeting, which is just like such a funny thing because there's like someone singing terribly on the other side of the wall and you're like all just sort of like commenting on it occasionally. But you basically decide you're at a wall of some kind, right? You've hit some sort of wall in the course of this investigation. And you don't really know what to do. And then you realize, oh wait, that weird reporter girl, that woman that I saw and gave me her card at Matarame's, and then I saw at the train station again and didn't recognize, which I think is why she's there, right? Is to remind you she's a character.
Totally. Yeah. Again, it's one of the, like, the game's smartly integrating characters who feel like they're on the periphery, but will end up meaning more later on.
Right, exactly. You decide to email Oya, and say, can we meet, basically? Which is not weird at all, but That's okay. I mean, I guess she did give you her card explicitly for that purpose of, like, hey, if you know anything, get in touch. And so you get in touch. Yeah. And then some people sing badly again, and then you leave karaoke, and it's confusing why you were there at all, but it's still great.
Yeah, it's one of those... It is definitely a weird day because it doesn't resolve anything. Like, it gets you to that Oya moment, but that could have happened the day before.
Right. You could have just emailed her.
Yeah, it could have just been like, oh yeah, right, that thought could have been put into the day before reasonably enough, and it wouldn't have felt out of place. But
I like all of them hanging out in a karaoke club for no reason too.
Exactly. So yeah, it's another day of just the gang hanging out, and then as we move on, another free evening.
Yeah. That time I just hung out with Kawakami. I didn't level her, but I hung out with her and I gave her a gift.
Cool. I did the second Big Bang Burger challenge.
Hey!
Yep, because I realized that of remembering doing it from the first game. I was like, oh right, there were different levels of it, and so I thought I was clear enough for the second one, so I went for it, and it was so vindicating to get it done so early. Like, I know there's more to it, but just to be able to be like 2 levels into it this early, I legitimately don't think I did the Big Bang Burger challenge for the first time until like September or October, like sometime later in the game.
Congrats on being ahead of the curve.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I believe the way that works is that you need all the things to be at the same level of, except for kindness is the only one that doesn't matter, I think.
Yeah, it's at least 3 of them. It might be 4, but yeah, it's definitely, I think, knowledge, charm, and guts, I want to say at least.
And proficiency.
Okay,
I know proficiency is part of it, at least.
Gotcha.
Anyway.
I always have proficiency up just because of the like lockpick making, so it's just one I don't think about, but yeah.
Yeah. That one generally kind of naturally levels pretty well compared to the others. After the evening, you get the first of 2 very awkward and uncomfortable Nijima dinners where Sai and Makoto are talking. I don't fully remember which one this is. This is the one, I think, where she asks about her dad.
I believe so, yeah.
And basically is like, their dad who was a cop, right? Basically being like, do you think he would have been on the side of the Phantom Thieves? Makoto asks. And Sai is just like, Why do you care? Don't think about that stuff. Stop. Focus on your studies. Don't worry about it. It's hard out there for a woman. Straighten up and fly right, and don't worry about stupid things like that. You need to go to a good school. And Makoto's just like, like very. Sai kind of like explodes like off of a really simple question.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think it's an interesting back and forth because we know of Sai, but we don't know what's really going on in her life at this point, and so it's
right.
easy to assume that like, oh yeah, there might have been like, you know, work pressures or things in the background going on that we don't have a full scope of. Obviously, we know she's under a little bit of stress, but yeah, she just explodes at Makoto, and it's definitely one of those moments where just like, oh man, my heart broke for Makoto because she's genuinely like reckoning with a lot of emotional, personal stuff, right? Like in this week particularly, and so to go through that with someone who is arguably the person she's closest to is a lot to have to handle. But yeah.
Yeah, it is a lot. Actually, I think I might have skipped something. No. It's the next morning. Never mind.
Yeah, you're good.
So then, speaking of Makoto getting yelled at and stressed out, we move on to June 18th, where Makoto and Ida, the kid that you guys like interrogated 2 days before, Ida goes to Makoto in the student council room and is basically like, I only told you that I was being like doing this and involved in this. Did you leak this? There were kids asking me about it. How could you like betray my trust? What are you going to do about it? Do you even care? You just want a letter or recommendation. And she's like, I do care. I am trying to solve this. And just like, just once again, just getting totally like beat down by another person.
Yeah. From all corners of her life.
Yeah, exactly. But also getting more kind of like resolute in her goal to like actually help these people and like actually like wanting to do something about it.
Yeah.
And you see sort of the transition more again from her being just like the principal asking her to do a thing to like she actually wants to be beneficial to her student body in some way like this.
Yeah.
And feeling obligated to, and you know, like she needs to protect them to a certain extent because it's her duty. So you get that, and then in the afternoon you get a reply, I think a text from Oya, maybe it's a call, where she says to meet her at a bar in Shinjuku, which again, not sketchy at all, but the point being Shinjuku's red light district is for grown-ups, and it's kind of like, you decide you're gonna have to like go with Ryuji, right, to make it like brave the trip, basically, like getting prepared for this sort of thing. But you do get a free afternoon before that, which is the 18th. Oh yes, I remember what I did.
We might have done the same thing then if you're that excited. You go ahead.
This is the rudest. Let me just preface it. Let me get settled into this real quick. This is the rudest thing that Persona 5 does. This is the rudest thing in the entire game. It spends a month not making Yusuke a confidant and just like giving you these heartfelt moments with him and just not making him a confidant and giving you all these sort of opportunities to learn more about him and not making him a confidant. And then he's available on June 18th to become a confidant, and it does not tell you unless you check the map.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a text from him that's like, hey, I'm in Shibuya, do you want to hang out? It's like, you just have to check the map and be like, oh wait, Yusuke's there.
And there he's waiting.
Game, what are you doing to me? Yes,
yeah,
I went and hung out with Yusuke and got him as a confidant.
Me too. He just gets thrown in there. You got to be looking out for it. So.
Oh man, it's so rude. It's so rude.
I just wrote, it actually starts the confidant chain now with a few exclamation points. Yeah, it took some time, but we're finally here.
Yes. And it's a cool confidant start, too.
Yeah.
Because Yusuke's basically like, I don't know what I'm doing with my art. Like, I don't know how to capture emotion anymore. And you're like, let's go to Mementos. And so you like, and this is the first time I think in sort of like the context of the game where it like for lack of a better term, like sequence breaking the normal sort of like pattern and a rhythm breaking, I guess is better, because it's like, oh, suddenly you're just going to mementos, which is like usually a thing you got to prepare for.
Yeah, which to me like feels workable. Like I don't have a problem with it necessarily.
No.
It feels like a thing where it's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna hop into mementos real quick, deal with this thing, and then come back out.
Yeah. And Yusuke sketches there, but then you like have to do a fight right there. It's just really cool that it's like willing to weave that sort of stuff into it, and also does it nicely because it doesn't take away your free evening right after that. It's not like it throws you into mementos and you have no choice, and then I gotcha, you can't go out tonight. Yeah. Although I think you can't go out tonight for other reasons, but anyway. Yeah. So we finally get Yusuke, and we give him. He decides to sketch the human heart by going into the human heart, basically, which is very meta and cool.
Very Yusuke.
Very Yusuke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's finally we did it. Started from the bottom, but now we're here.
You can sigh of relief. I wonder if there's going to be anything else. I'm trying to think ahead if any other sort of like delayed thing will piss you off, but nothing's coming.
Well, something kind of happened next week, but
yeah, we'll get there.
Anyway, so that evening, you and Ryuji go to Shinjuku, and this is the first time that we unlock Shinjuku, which is kind of the next. What's the right word for these? Like hub sort of hangout areas where you can go to a lot of different shops and you can walk around. You know, we had Kichijoji and Shibuya before this, and now Shinjuku. And a bunch of things happen. Ryuji shows up in his school uniform, which is very silly. And then immediately there's a cop walks up to you and is like, hey, are you high schoolers? I recognize your pants. And he's like, no. I actually wrote the quote down. At one point, you're like, we're in college, or you can say whatever you want, right? But if you lie and say that you're not a high schooler, then Ryuji just goes, oh yeah, we're adults, you see? Yeah. Is his exact quote.
Yeah.
Which is like just the greatest two kids in a trench coat pretending to be an adult sort of line.
Yeah. It's like, why do you have these pants? Okay. Yeah. It's such a bad lie, but it's perfectly Ryuji.
Yeah. You also, and we're going to talk about, I think we're probably going to talk about Shinjuku a little bit next week, because you don't get much, you can explore Shinjuku here, but you like can't go into any of the shops, and there are a lot of really important shops here that I'm really, really excited to have unlocked.
Yeah.
You do meet the fortune teller who's there, who's basically like, hey, I'm here on evenings where it's not raining, come back and get your fortune read. And then you finally get to the bar. Ryuji has to run away, but you finally get to the bar, which is called Crossroads. And you head in and you meet Oya, who is the reporter, who is already drunk. And basically she's like, what do you want to talk about? She's very silly and bubbly and drunk. And you ask her basically straight up about this mob boss. And she gives you a name. Just like outright.
It's, go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say, it's just I enjoyed the scene, especially because the bartender is like, do not give him alcohol. But otherwise, I guess
water.
Feel free to talk to this kid in the bar about these illicit things. And her being already a bit tipsy drunk definitely does help get that information. But we get a name finally.
And this is also like a very funny... I like Crossroads as a bar too, because Lala, the like... drag queen bartender and owner of it, is like a really fun, friendly, nice character who Oya is arguably doing something incredibly irresponsible and like weird by hanging out with this high schooler while drunk in this like jazz bar. And Lala is like very protective of you in like a really like endearing way.
Yeah. I like this introduction a lot, especially because it doesn't feel like it's, you shouldn't be there with them and everything, but it is a nice sort of like a bartender relationship to a regular, and the bar being quiet otherwise that night. It feels very realistic to how this probably night would have gone down.
Yeah, it does. And I like Lala a lot, and I like you said, I like Lala and Oya's kind of like interplay and relationship a lot, and especially as it goes forward a little bit. So it's like kind of a weird situation, but also like because it's so in the air that it is weird, it's not like actually weird, it's just sort of fun and funny.
Yeah, totally.
So she gives you Kanashiro's name, so now you can go find his palace, but then she says, hey, I need to, write stuff about the Phantom Thieves, basically, or, like, write stuff about, like, a new beat. Do you know anyone who... You went to Shujin, do you know anyone who I could talk to about the Kamoshida incident, basically? And you give her Mishima's number?
Yeah.
And this is my favorite mean thing that happens, is that Mishima later in that night texts you and is like, hey, I just got a text from a girl that said you gave her my number and she wants to meet up. This is so exciting. And you can either be like, it's not what you think. You get like multiple dialogue options to be like, it's not what you think. Or you can just be like, you'll see. And I like always went with those options.
Oh, me too. It's so against my nature too. Like I would never do this to someone in real life, but knowing that it's Mishima and also it's a video game, I was like, yeah, man, you'll find out.
He's like, is she cute? And you're like, you'll see.
Yeah, he's just such a sad sack, so it's very fun to do. But yeah.
And then right before we leave Shinjuku, there is this scene which I do want to talk about, which is this one of the kind of like notorious scenes that got rewritten for Royal. So this was a scene that was kind of notoriously considered pretty homophobic because there are these two characters who come up and they're very flamboyant and they basically just like abduct Ryuji to like, it's all very like sexually charged, right? Like it's very like, it seems like they're basically just gonna go like assault him and you as like your friend just kind of like sit back and let it happen and then leave. And they rewrote this scene in a way that I think actually does like a lot of heavy lifting to sort of make it not like really not as offensive as it used to be, where instead of it just being these characters that were like crazy gays is basically the way that they were treated, is now it's like, oh, they're drag queens and they saw Ryuji come out of Crossroads, which was a drag bar, so they think they misunderstand that he has an interest in drag, and so they're like, you're gonna be a great drag queen, let's get you a dress immediately. And he's like, I don't know what's going on. And then you leaving him there is more like just fun, or like slightly more fun, because you're like, well, have fun getting in a dress, and you just leave. And suddenly, like, they did a lot of work to change the context of that in a way that I think is much more just, like, funny rather than offensive.
Yeah, and there's definitely, I know there will be other scenes that we'll talk about with this that I don't know how they've been changed and everything. But yeah, at least with this scene, it did feel like they did a great job. And obviously, as someone who is not, I have not... I don't consider myself a member of the LGBTQIA community, and have not gotten into drag, though I have gone to a few drag bars, and I think the way they play this feels more appropriate and doesn't demean that community in nearly the way that the game originally with these scenes, at least this scene in particular, did very much make a mockery of things.
I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
This does not feel like it is mocking. It is more so the like Ryuji taken by surprise by this happening, and he doesn't, at least from my reading of it, and I granted it's been 2 weeks, so I may be forgetting the exact dialogue, but nothing that he or Joker says to me comes off as like what they're doing is something that I don't approve of or is gross or look down onto them.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like the game is looking down on them in any way, which it shouldn't be, of course. I think it's just to make clear we don't think it should be looking down on them. But I definitely am glad they took the steps to fix that stuff in this scene for sure.
Because this was a scene, like, not to harp on this too long, because I think that they did just do a good job of kind of adjusting it the way they needed to, as best they could, because the other option would just be to cut it out entirely, and I don't think that, like, there's merits, there's a discussion to be had about whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, but they did what they could without doing that, basically.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I just think it was handled as best they could, because this was a scene that like was so notorious that when Royal got announced for the West, like Atlas came out and was like, we've made adjustments, right? Like they actively knew that this was going to be a thing people wanted to see. So it's nice that they listened to the community of fans around that game for that.
Yeah. And all I can hope is that we just avoid this for the base game for whatever the next Persona is, and don't have to do rewrites.
And there's another discussion that we're not going to get into here about the idea of quote unquote censorship for Western versions compared to like Japanese releases. I think that's a very complicated conversation that we don't really want to get into right now, but what we can at least say is, in this instance, this was a thing that made a lot of people uncomfortable, and in my opinion really did need to be changed in some way. And I think the changes that Royal brought did a good job of doing what they could.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely with the scene, I agree, and it makes me hopeful for what we see in the future, but still cautious about there are other scenes to come in the game. But yeah.
Sure. So, June 19th, moving right along, y'all go back to Shibuya, because now you have Kaneshiro's name. You guess the palace keyword, which you eventually guess is bank. And suddenly you realize... Oh, and you also guess at what the location is, which is all of Shibuya, which Ryuji says accidentally. And you realize that Kaneshiro only sees people as walking ATMs, and he sees all of Shibuya as basically his bank to withdraw from. But more than that, because he never leaves a trace, and he never leaves a trail, the bank itself that is his palace is actually flying, and it's a giant vacuum Roomba basically flying over the city, just sucking up money, which I think is a wonderful visual.
Oh, yeah.
But it also means that you can't get into the bank yet. So you sort of just like wander around Shibuya a little bit and then leave. That evening you get a text from Oya basically being like, hey, Kaneshiro is like really a mob boss, so you like should not, like a high schooler shouldn't mess with him, just kind of warning you.
Yeah.
There's the home shopping channel, which I do not remember at all what I bought.
I don't either.
Well, then we don't have to worry about it. But we did get a free evening that evening as well. Which I finished a movie for.
I finished the Walking Dead parody.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we skipped the evening for yesterday, too. Yesterday I started a movie, and then today I finished it.
I think I started it there, too, because, I don't have it written down, but I think I started something, the DVD that night, yeah.
So you did the Walking Dead parody. I watched Not So Hot Betty, which is the Ugly Betty parody for Charm.
Yeah, I just rented that one in the next week, but yeah.
And I also wrote down a quote from that, which was one of my favorites, where somebody's like, Betty, like, why do you think you could be a fashion journalist? Like, someone like you could be a fashion journalist. And she just goes, because I really like words and pants. Which is such a wonderful line.
The two qualifications, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same for being a video game journalist. You have to love words and buttons. That's the main two qualifications. Yeah.
That's actually also true of being a fashion journalist. Words and buttons.
Yeah.
Anyway, that evening after our movies, you get Sad Nijima Dinner Part 2 Electric Boogaloo.
So this is where I have written down they have the conversation about the deceased father.
Okay.
But
maybe this was that one.
Yeah. Either way.
This is the dad. I remember it being one place or another, but what I do remember in this one is that Sai goes even harder, basically. Like, it's kind of the same impetus. These scenes are very similar, of just sort of, like, talking about other things. And then Sai goes from being mad about her talking about other stuff to being like, you're a drain on my life and you're useless and I don't love you. I mean, she doesn't say that last part, but she literally calls her useless.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I'm sorry, that was uncalled for. I'm not going to eat at home anymore. I'm going to be working late every night. And you're like, whoa, Sai.
Yeah. People should go to therapy. Yeah, it's a really... I think it sets Makoto off on the path that we then see in the next day.
Yeah. Yes.
Which I love. Just a side note, before this episode, we were like, I hope we have enough to talk about to fill like a full hour. We're already at a full hour. But there's a lot of great stuff this week, and I think this really like it's been building and building, and the like pressure that Makoto is putting on herself, and then that we see actualized through other conversations, is happening all throughout this week. And then the useless comment is the one that I think like really sets her off in terms of like, no, I need to make a change because I am not useless.
Yep. And speaking of, we go on to June 20th. There's a quiz that you have to help out about what device you would have that has metals in it, and it's like, yeah, it's your phone.
Your comb, your phone, or like, I think it was something else random, but it's like, oh yeah, the one electronic.
Yeah. Anyway, you all meet at the hideout. Makoto shows up there to like try to like be that kid who wants to hang out with you too. And everyone's still like really hostile to her at this point because she's still the antagonist, right? On also says Makoto is useless and shouldn't be here, and that is like that sort of light switch flipping right in her head, and she's like, fine, I'm not useless, and just like runs away, and you're like, and she basically runs straight to Shibuya, runs up to some sketchy guys, and is just like, hey, your boss is Kaneshiro, right? Take me to him right now. And like gets herself intentionally kidnapped pretty much.
Yeah. That about sums it up.
You all run after her, you try to get a taxi, and I love Ryuji because he literally jumps in front of a taxi to stop it so that they can get after her quickly. Because he's the best boy.
He is.
And you all rush to Kaneshiro's, and Kaneshiro sees all of you, gives his, like, girlfriend 3 million yen for a purse, and then is like, takes a picture of you all with, like, drugs and alcohol and partying and stuff, and then is like, well, you just cost me $3 million because I spend money when I'm mad, and now I have evidence that you've been partying with drugs and alcohol, so you owe me $3 million in 3 weeks.
He's such a slime ball.
Yeah, it's like, oh. And Kaneshiro's like, this is the first time you're meeting him, right? And he just like immediately plays you like a fiddle and is like, oh, now all of you are under his thumb and you owe him 3 million yen.
Exactly.
And there's nothing you can do about it. Makoto specifically being like the target.
Totally, yeah. And it just instantly is like, oh yeah, we're out of our depth. Oh, this is, yeah.
Yeah.
We are kids.
And Makoto caused it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So you all leave, and Makoto basically opens up about why she did that and what's been going on with her. And as soon as she's like becomes vulnerable and opens up about all this stuff, like I think the group like really quickly rallies around her and is like,
yeah,
we're here for you very, very fast, because they realize that she's kind of just like them, right? She's an outsider who is feeling pressured by the world and getting screwed over by adults. And then you also start talking to Morgana right in front of her. And she's like, you guys are talking to a cat. What's going on? And then you realize that because she became blackmailed by Kaneshiro, she was now one of Kaneshiro's customers in his cognition so that she can get into the bank. So you bring her into the cognitive world. She immediately understands what's going on in a way that nobody else before her did. And the bank lets you up. And so you go into the bank, and Shadow Kaneshiro is creepy and has a thin little wispy mustache. It's very gross.
Disgusting. Yep. I hate him. Hate him in real life. Hate him more in the palace. Yeah.
And basically he threatens everybody by saying he knows who Makoto is, and he knows who Sai is at the prosecutor's office, and basically is like, oh yeah, since I'm blackmailing you, like, I can control your sister through you, and, like, I will make her my personal slave, which is just, like, he's just such a gross dude.
Hate him.
And so that's you're screwed, right? But you're in the bank now, and it's a trap, obviously, because of course it's a trap. And so you all run away, and Makoto awakens. And she gets her persona, and her persona is a flippin' motorcycle.
It's great. I
love that even Morgana is like, what?
Yeah, this was the first one. I had that reaction too. It was the first one where it's like, okay, yeah, like the other ones were people, for lack of a better term. Like they were humanoid figures in just different art styles and different inspirations. And then this is the first one. Granted, there is a face, but yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, she just has a bike, and like she also her outfit too is, I think, like very not stark, but like very shocking, because it feels a little bit different than the personality we've been given of her so far.
She's so buttoned up and polite and together, and then her outfit is like a biker gang, and it's like, whoa, okay, that's not what I expected.
Yeah, it's my favorite transformation, I think, so far.
I mean, I love it too because it's just so confident. Like, she's just so immediately confident in herself and who she is and what she's doing. And it's not like the others aren't, but like, she's just so immediately like, let's go, and then like busts through the door on her motorcycle, right? Like, she does not hesitate at all.
Yeah, she, as you said, she gets it like instantly, not just like understanding the palace, but understanding her transformation as well. And yeah. Makoto's
great. She's finally part of the team. She's a Phantom Thief, and she is brought into the fold, and obviously they leave, and she's exhausted, but still, like, very much understands kind of, like, what's going on, right? Like, she's very clearly smarter than the rest of the Phantom Thieves in terms of, like, picking stuff up quickly, which is really cool to see because it's very different than anybody else who joined. Yusuke sort of, like, didn't understand, but also didn't care. Like, he was just like, sure, why not? Whereas Makoto, like, gets it really quick.
Yes, and we'll have more to discuss about that next week. But yeah, she gets it a bit better than the rest of them, even, at times.
Yeah. Yes. So, that evening, we do get a free evening. I made lockpicks. Or I guess you get a free evening in, right?
Yeah.
I made lockpicks to prepare for the palace.
Nice. It seems to have not been written down, but I'm pretty sure this was the night that I think I just made coffee.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to do. And then I believe you also level up Morgana that night. You have a little conversation with Morgana and get another level there. We were talking about this before, but I'll just mention it. My notes literally just say Morgana being cryptically adorable, but I genuinely don't remember what that conversation was or what that note meant.
This conversation, from what I have from my notes, was mostly about Morgana just still really being confused about their identity,
right,
and the source of their life that they can't remember, and a few words like trigger some thought for them. I think the words I wrote down were carry and take somewhere. And something crosses Morgana's mind, but can't quite make like a breakthrough to whatever the next moment is.
Right.
And then also is just wonderfully snarky to Joker and is like, unlike all of you, Makoto's actually pretty clever about this, so I'm glad we have her aboard.
Right. And that's the week. That's the thing.
We did it.
We did the thing. And so now, obviously, the mission is going to begin. You have a 3-week deadline. And next week is our first full week of free time for Kaneshiro's Palace. And now we're there, and we can go to the bank, and Makoto's on the team, and everything is peachy and lovely. Before we head out, let's do some quiz stuff. Jonathan, you have your persona pseudonym for me, and I will have a pop quiz for the audience.
I do, yes. So I, as always, will be asking you to tell me the real identity of a persona. This one is... I give you the pseudonym that is originally given to them, and then you must guess. This one is the Waterside Nymph.
Waterside Nymph?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I know this one.
This is...
I don't even think I have a guess.
Apsaris.
Oh, Apsaris. Yeah. The blue person with the she's got like a scarf, I think.
Yes, yeah. It's basically like a very like long flowy ribbon around.
Oh, yeah. I probably could have gotten that one if I was... Right. Oh, okay. Well, can't win them all. There we go.
But you have a pop quiz.
Yes, I do. So, I'm going to ask this question. Obviously, since we're recording these back-to-back, we won't be able to take viewers' guesses, but you could still watch this episode and then guess and listen to the next one or whatever if you want. So, the question this week is, gotta do the thing. Oh yes, when An is talking to Ida during their investigation into the incidents with things, she's acting and she's faking, and she's telling him that she really needs this part-time job that he has because she needs the money, and she says that she needs it for her cat, which is a fake cat. So the question for all of you is, what's the name of An's fake cat? And as a bonus point, what does she say happened to it, which is why she needs the money?
I do remember this one, so I'm not going to guess. But
well, yes. You can tell me in 10 minutes when we start recording the next episode. Cool. Well, that's the quiz. Again, you can always message us. I'm at TarmarMarks on Twitter. Jonathan's at JM Dornbush. You can go to the Dornology YouTube channel and leave a YouTube comment. You can email us at dornology@gmail.com. There's lots of places to get in touch. That's it. Please, if you like the show, give it a review, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, all those good things. We really appreciate it. And until then, we'll see you in the next one.